Hey guys, thanks for checking in on the NFN Radio News Podcast, brought to you by Not Fake News.biz. I'm Bob Gaddy, editor and publisher of Not Fake News. Our guest today is Mark M. Bello, a trial lawyer and prolific author of headline-inspired legal thrillers, the most recent of which is Supreme Betrayal, a gripping novel about a Supreme Court nominee who is a sexual predator. In our conversation, Bello discusses his books, of course, but also the conflicts of police violence, the consequences of the Trump presidency, efforts to take away constitutional guaranteed rights, and much, much more. I'm also proud to report that Mark will be a frequent contributor to our notfakenews.biz blog site, and his first contribution focused on police killings, such as that of George Floyd and Daunte Wright, is now online. So take a listen to our interview with attorney and author Mark M. Bello. Hey Mark, where did all of this begin with you? You were a trial lawyer, now you're a prolific author of legal thrillers. Where did all this start?
Well, that's an interesting question. It can be answered several different ways, but it started when I was a kid, and I was introduced by my parents to people who were less fortunate than we were. And it kind of is what made me become a lawyer. Family members who were Holocaust victims, people who were street peddlers or panhandlers. And my father would always reach into his pocket and give someone a buck. My father wasn't a tremendously successful man, but he was very charitable. So when I was looking for my career, I decided to become a lawyer and represent people who were essentially less fortunate than perhaps others might be. That's where my social justice route started. Mm-hmm. As a lawyer, I ended up representing people who were injured, disabled, treated poorly by the government, by industry, by large corporations, by the cops. And that's how I spent my career. When I was a young lawyer in my 30s, I handled a case against the Catholic Church, representing two kids who were sexually abused by a Catholic priest. And the church behaved despicably. They fought us tooth and nail. They denied involvement. They denied covering up this priest's behavior. They covered up the priest's behavior during the litigation. They dodged, weaved, did whatever they could to avoid responsibility and payment. This is now in the 80s, so this is before the incidents that happened that resulted in the movie Spotlight.
Right.
It was very early in the scandal. Mm-hmm. We were a trailblazer in that field. And when the case was over, it took about 3-4 years to resolve. I said to myself, someday, when I have more time, I'll write a book about this. And 20 years or so later, I sat down and started to write Betrayal of Faith, my first book. It's a fictional account of the experiences that I felt during the handling of that case. I put it down for a while. When I retired, I'm not retired, but when I slowed down, how's that? I don't know where you are in life, but I've slowed down.
Yeah.
I had more time on my hands.
Yeah, right.
So when that happened, I sat down and finished the book at age 65. It's had a few edits in between, but that was my first novel. I thought at that time that I had fulfilled my bucket list item. I was done writing. I was a one and done author. I had fun. It was a hard thing to do. I wrote it from personal experience. So I didn't think of myself as somebody who could, quote, write novels. Then the 2016 election came along.
Right.
And I said to myself, oh my God, this guy might actually become president of the United States. And his campaign rhetoric was such that I felt that a lot of what he was saying was bigoted, angry, divisive. All the things that he did as president, he claimed he would do as a candidate. So I wrote a book called Betrayal of Justice, and it's about a bigoted president who gets elected, a businessman who gets elected and decides to deport all Muslims, decides to do mean things at the border, and essentially behaves the way Donald Trump behaved as president. I get a lot of right-wing criticism for, quote, doing a hit job, unquote, on the president. And my favorite response to that is, I wrote the book before he became president. If anything, he imitated my guy. I didn't imitate him. Once I wrote the second book from a newsworthy event, I realized that I could write novels that were not necessarily related to my personal experience. And that's what basically propelled my 6-novel series. Long-winded answer, but that's the.
Yeah, well, but it's very, very, very interesting. So you essentially pluck plots from the news and build your novels around those.
I do, and the follow-up books have been a book about white supremacy and the blue wall of policing.
Uh-huh.
The next book after that, that book is called Betrayal in Blue. It's about a cop-on-cop lawsuit where one police officer is accused of murder and the other police officer tries to make sure he's prosecuted. So it's called Betrayal in Blue.
Right.
The fourth book is Betrayal in Black, and it's about police brutality and shootings of innocent black people. It takes one incident and basically tells how the civil and criminal justice systems might handle appropriately such an event. George Floyd seems to be the first time the system got it right. My book basically gives you a blueprint on how to get it right. All of my books are fiction, by the way. They're not nonfiction.
Yeah.
The fifth book is Betrayal High. That's about a school shooting, and kind of the same concept. It's critical of the gun industry. It's critical of immunity for gun manufacturers. I'm very anti-immunity. And the sixth book is called Supreme Betrayal. I just released it. And it's about a candidate for the Supreme Court who has a sexual assault in his past, and the woman comes forward and tries to prevent his nomination from going forward. And there again, I got accused of doing a hit job on Brett Kavanaugh, and I tell everybody who will listen that I don't know Brett Kavanaugh. I don't know whether Christine Ford was truthful or not. I don't know whether Kavanaugh was truthful or not. My guy is a bad guy. He's probably the worst character I've created in literature. He's a nasty, nasty, narcissistical criminal. I can't say that about Brett Kavanaugh. So while the book was inspired by the Kavanaugh hearings, it is not
Right.
a hit job on Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, right. Well, the Trump administration gave you plenty of opportunity. You probably could have written a lot more books than what you did. Now, with the Derek Chauvin trial and the verdict, what were your thoughts during that trial and after the verdict? What do you think needs to be done going forward?
Well, that's three questions I think you asked me.
Yeah, I did.
During the trial, the emotion was concern. Can an event like this actually happen to a human being? And because someone is a police officer, when they do it, and there's where the immunity issue comes in again.
Mm-hmm.
Because keep in mind that an officer has limited immunity in situations like that, and you have to overcome that burden and standard as well. So essentially what the verdict represents is the prosecution's ability to present compelling evidence that this crossed the line. There are lines that an officer doesn't cross and essentially gets away with murder. And that's what I am railing against. The idea that you can pull somebody over and be their judge, jury, and executioner is abhorrent to me. Officers need to keep their gun in their pants. And if they do that, shoot themselves in the balls. I mean, don't pull your gun on people.
Right.
So you could delete that if you want.
I don't think I will.
But the third thing you asked me is, what's my reaction post verdict,
right,
and what do I think can be done? Mm-hmm. I think just what I said. I think they need to treat cops the same way they treat citizens, and when they do something wrong, we should be allowed to prosecute them and let a jury of their peers decide whether they're innocent or guilty of something. That's been sorely lacking in these kinds of cases. Either the cops don't get prosecuted at all, or if they do, they get prosecuted for crimes that are lesser offenses, or they get the benefit of the doubt and get acquitted. And in this case, finally, someone who did a inconceivable act was found guilty. And God bless that jury, because it's a tough thing to do in the atmosphere.
I was surprised. I'm
Trump
sorry, go
didn't
ahead.
make it any better. He made it worse.
Yeah. I was surprised that the jury returned its verdict as quickly as it did, actually.
Well, that's how guilty he was. And again,
yeah.
the fear until they said guilty, 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 Bob, did you fear he was going to be acquitted?
I did. Of course I did. I was really worried about it.
I'm a lawyer, and I felt the same way.
Yeah. I was really worried about it because, I felt that the fact that the jury was multiracial, that would help. It wasn't as though it was an all-white jury. I also felt that the video evidence was just incontrovertible. That the young woman that shot that video was a hero, and that that video was what really nailed Chauvin's coffin.
If George Floyd was white, would we have needed the video? I don't know. Or if the cop was black and the victim was white, would we have needed the video?
Mark, that's a really good question. That is a really good question.
It's an interesting issue, and it's sad that a video like that had to be the difference maker.
Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts about this latest incident where the cop claims that she thought that her gun was actually a taser, and she went, "Oh shit, I shot the guy."
It remains to be seen. I don't know. Have you ever held a taser?
No.
Have you ever held a gun?
Yes.
A gun is much heavier than a taser.
Uh-huh.
It's a much different shape than a taser.
Mm-hmm.
It strains credibility to suggest that she's telling the truth, but giving her the benefit of the doubt,
mm-hmm.
even saying that she mistook a taser for a gun, it's still criminal negligence. A man is still dead. she's still a citizen first. She has no right to shoot an unarmed man, resisting or not resisting, trying to get away or not trying to get away. And that's another issue I have. Betrayal in Black kind of, it doesn't go all the way. It's a fictional tale, but it recommends retraining and types of retraining that can be done. And I think that's a big issue here. I think cops have been trained a certain way. Don't let a criminal get away under any circumstances. They were there to serve a warrant. In George Floyd's case, it was a $20 bill. In this case, it was a minor misdemeanor. And he gets in his car. He tries to escape. Rashad Brooks in Atlanta, same thing. The crime was he took the guy's taser and tased a cop, and the cop's partner shot him. My problem with all of this is, what is the original crime?
Right.
A minor traffic offense, a counterfeit 20, some kind of misdemeanor. These are not death penalty offenses. Let the people go. They're not a danger to society. Go arrest them at their house. But to try to detain them on the scene and kill them if they don't comply, you lose me there. But that's what needs to change. This mentality that at all costs you have to detain and capture the suspect.
Well, a lot of people will ask this question: what are cops supposed to do if they have a criminal they're chasing who they suspect has committed a serious offense, robbed a bank, shot somebody, whatever? The individual is running away, won't stop when the cop yells, "Halt, stop, police, stop or I'll shoot," keeps going. What are they supposed to do at that point?
Well, that's a different question, isn't it? I'm not sure. By the way, on the other side of this question is the issue of police officer safety. Police officers are allowed to use deadly force to protect themselves and to protect other citizens.
Okay.
So when you think about it that way, to your question, whether the person is trying to get away or not, there's an argument to be made that if that person gets away with a gun, I'm holding up a gun, there it is,
right.
With a gun, having just robbed a bank or shot someone, that person is a danger to society. So that creates a whole different set of questions about the officer's behavior. If you look, for instance, at the events in Chicago, where the cop thought the 13-year-old gang member was holding a gun, there's at least an argument to be made that if he was holding a gun, and if he threw it away in the same motion and got shot, that might be a justifiable shooting.
Right.
It's tragic that a 13-year-old got killed, but it might be a justifiable shooting. The young lady in the most recent video that got shot in the back, holding a knife and threatening to stab the person in front of her, that situation might be a justifiable shooting.
Okay.
The other person's life at the end of the knife was saved. Right. This most recent incident, where they just released the video in North Carolina, more troubling. Here's a nonviolent criminal, and he was a criminal. He had some kind of record, and they were trying to serve a warrant or make an arrest. Got shot in the back, apparently. Back of the head, from what I understand. Where's the threat to society?
Right.
There needs to be that extra step, that extra threat to other citizens before a cop can pull a gun and shoot someone. Do
you think the Trump presidency exacerbated some of this situation?
The previous presidency or
Yes.
the current one?
The Trump presidency.
The current presidency. No, I don't think I don't think it enhanced police citizen behavior. I think it might have enhanced citizen versus citizen behavior. I think you have a lot of disgruntled, the so-called 73 million, very upset that they didn't carry the day. And there's an anger in society generated by the previous administration and fostered by some of the rhetoric of the current administration to the effect that it creates lots of divisiveness in our country. I certainly, as a lifelong Democrat and someone who is socially more liberal than I am conservative, I would suggest that some of the stuff that was done in the previous administration is more culpable than anything that's being done in the current administration. That I would definitely say. But I just think the inability for two sides to talk to each other without coming to blows in one way or another is very unfortunate. We used to be able to talk to each other regardless of what side we were on.
It is very unfortunate. Last night I was in a restaurant and a fellow was playing the accordion, and I got to talking to him. And I asked him, actually, he's going to be a guest on my show. I asked him what his politics were. And he said, well, he was socially conservative, fiscally conservative, and kind of a moderate socially. And I said, well, were you a Trump person? He said, well, I wasn't at first, but I grew to like Trump. I said, you did? He said, yeah, I did. He said he did what he said he'd do, and I like what he did at the border, and he wasn't full of bullshit. He just he said he would do something, and he did it. And I said, well, I started this thing called Not Fake News because he kept calling the news media fake news and the enemy of the people. And he said, oh, you got it all wrong. He said he didn't really mean the whole news media, only certain ones. And I said, you still want to be on my podcast because I totally disagree with you? He said, absolutely. He said, we need to be able to talk about this kind of thing. And I said, you are absolutely right. And so I expect to have him on.
Good for him.
Yeah.
The idea that he would grow to like Trump is a little surprising to me.
Yeah, me too, because I know a lot of people that went the other way.
What's his ethnic background, if I may ask? Did you ask that?
He's Italian.
How many generations of his family have lived in America?
I don't know that, but I can tell you he is retired probably in his early 70s.
Ask him on the podcast. I'm Jewish. Holocaust survivors or people who were about to be embroiled in the Holocaust or people from Russia who were affected by the pogroms escaped those two countries, multiple countries, Poland, Germany, Hungary, Austria, escaped and came to America. Some were let in, some were not. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an ancestor of those people who were fortunate enough to become Americans. My grandparents, that generation, That's not that far removed. My grandparents came from Poland on one side and Russia on the other. If they were treated the way today's southern border is being treated, locked in cages, detained at the border, where would I be? And what's the expression there? But by the grace of God, go thee. It's easily extended to whatever ethnic background you are. That old poem, Lazarus, I think his name is. They came for the. You familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I can't recite it for you, but the final paragraph is they came for me and there was nobody left to. They came for the Italians and I didn't care because I wasn't an Italian. They came for the Polish and I didn't care because I wasn't Polish.
Yes.
When they came for me, there wasn't anybody left to care.
Exactly.
I take that stuff very seriously. Yep. I take the Statue of Liberty and the epithet on the Statue of Liberty very seriously. Bring us your tired, your poor. That's what we're supposed to stand for. So I'd be interested in when he says he likes what Trump did on the border. Yeah. I'd be interested in hearing why.
Never fear, I will ask him.
That's
Mark, what is it?
Book, by the way,
I'm sorry.
That's the topic of my next book.
Oh, it is.
That one is tentatively called "Betrayal at the Border."
Okay.
Not released.
Well, we will watch for that. Mark, what is it that after all is said and done, all these books, everything you're doing to take a stand and educate people, what is it that you want to achieve at the end of the day when it's all over with?
What you just said. In my little law practice, I represented a client. I did some justice for that client, and maybe he referred other clients, and maybe I could do some justice for those clients. With my writing, I can touch people all over the country, all over the world. I have readers in many parts of the world. I'm self-published, as you know. It's very difficult to get recognized and noticed as a self-published author, but my books still reach a much wider cross-section of society than my little law practice could. And I'm basically trying to educate people that other people might be human beings who are less fortunate than they are, A. And B, this issue of, can't we be better than this? Rodney King said it really well years and years ago when he got the shit kicked out of him by 8 or 10 cops. Can't we all get along? And that's basically the message of my books. Can't we all get along? Can't we find a better way to do things? And one more thing about it, and that is big business and the government are doing things behind our backs that erode our rights to the courts. There's many, many different statutes, both on the federal side and on the state and local side, that limit our access to court. I'm a person who believes in the Seventh Amendment as much as a conservative gun owner believes in the Second Amendment. I would bet that if you asked your listeners, what does the Seventh Amendment say, they probably wouldn't know that we even have a Seventh Amendment and what it says. And I'll bet you're one of them.
You are right. So I was going to ask you, tell us what it is.
Well, the Fourth and the Sixth Amendment, equal protection under the law and due process, protect our criminal rights. The Seventh Amendment protects our civil rights. And I don't mean civil rights in terms of equality, that kind of thing. I mean your access to civil justice in court. A person under the Seventh Amendment can file a civil lawsuit against someone who harms them for any amount that exceeds $25. That's what the Seventh Amendment says.
Wow.
It is basically unfettered access to court for a civil harm exceeding $25. Okay? To me, that means the government or industry can't go into the judicial branch and say, well, yeah, but we're going to limit your recovery by tort reform to $250,000. Or we're going to prevent you from suing this corporation or that corporation because they sometimes do good things for America. Example, Michigan, where I live, is the only state in the country that has an absolute drug immunity law. If a drug is approved by the FDA and turns out to be a bad drug, a Michigan citizen cannot sue the drug manufacturer for creating the bad drug. You can sue in every other state in the union, but not in Michigan.
Wow.
Now, in every other state in the union, your recovery might be limited to a tort reformed amount. You can't collect millions of dollars for the serious damage you incurred. George Floyd's family collected $27 million, as you might recall. In product liability, medical malpractice, or and drugs, by the way, are a product, so they would be included in this product liability immunity, or government cops, the immunity I spoke of earlier about cops. All of these things are inventions of the legislature to limit citizens' rights to sue. Why? Answer, money. They don't want municipalities, governments, private industry, doctors, hospitals paying out just awards to citizens. They don't want juries deciding that. They want arbitrators, the legislature, or the government to decide. And I'm very offended and opposed to that. Strange bedfellows, a little story for you. The Tea Party, the very conservative end of the Republican Party, is as anti-tort reform because of the Seventh Amendment as they are anti-gun legislation. They believe that the Seventh Amendment is just as important as the Second Amendment. They aren't tort reform hypocrites, as I call Second Amendment advocates who ignore the Seventh Amendment. Mm-hmm. If you believe in the Constitution, you've got to believe in it all.
Yeah, so there's the whole issue of immunity for gun manufacturers.
Well, that's what my fifth book is about.
Okay.
Betrayal High is about a school shooting and a young kid who was bullied. And the bullying got so severe that he became a school shooter. And he becomes kind of a sympathetic criminal in the book. The real criminal is the gun manufacturer who illegally put the gun in the hands of this kid's father. Mm-hmm. And again, just like Betrayal in Black and police reforms, the book kind of gives you a blueprint for how to reform these gun immunity laws. I'm not an anti-gun. I can't be inconsistent. There's certainly a Second Amendment in this country. I don't think the Second Amendment necessarily says what gun advocates say it says. If you read it, I don't know how it extends to the idea that people can own assault rifles.
Right.
But what I do think is, if you're going to, as an industry, not help close loopholes, not help prevent black market sales of your merchandise, not do the things necessary to prevent weapons from falling into the hands of people who shouldn't own them, create weapons that people don't need for legitimate purpose, I think you should have liability. And the 2005 Act that you refer to, I think it's called the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, signed into law by George W. Bush, is something that should be repealed. It's mentioned in my book, and there's a pretty interesting discussion about gun immunity laws and liability to gun manufacturers in the book. There are exceptions to that law, and the book, Zachary Blake, my hero lawyer, comes up with some clever theories of liability that readers will find interesting in terms of chasing the real bad guys in those cases.
So is Zachary Blake kind of your secret, what you would have liked to have been, or maybe what you were?
It's interesting. It's interesting you say. I say that a lot. He's the lawyer I always wanted to be.
And tell me this: where did you come up with the name Zachary Blake?
Zachary is my son.
Okay.
Blake is my nephew.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a.
But don't tell anybody.
That's a good reason. You know, one time I was working on Capitol Hill for a congressman, right? And this local paper asked me if I would write an article for them, and I didn't want to use my name because I didn't want it to be tied to the congressman. So I used the name Clifford M. Michaels. Clifford was my dog. He was a big Saint Bernard. And M was for my daughter, Michelle, and Michael was my son. And so here, you know, I would have thought, oh, he came up with this name because it sounds rough and tough or whatever. But no.
I have fun with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm from Detroit. My books have a lot of Detroit flavor that Detroiters will recognize. Maybe not people that aren't from Detroit. I'm Jewish, so my book has a lot of. Do you know the word kibitzing?
Yeah.
Jewish kibitzing.
Okay. I like to kibitz.
I make a lot of reference to my. Zachary is Jewish.
Okay.
I make a lot of reference to his heritage.
Oh, okay.
I wrote a novella, by the way, that basically it's available free on Amazon and at my website. But the novella basically tells the story of Zachary's grandfather's Holocaust experience and escape from Auschwitz. And he promises to tell Zachary the story on the eve of his bar mitzvah.
Okay.
So the book is about the retelling of the story on the eve of Zachary's bar mitzvah, and it basically introduces Zach to social justice issues and stands as the number one reason why he decided to become a social justice lawyer.
Oh.
So all of my books have a little of that in them.
Right.
I also play around with friends and family's names. So almost every name in the books are someone I know. In the first book, there are a lot of characters whose names are similar to the characters who were involved in the real case.
Okay.
So they will recognize
Mm-hmm.
their counterparts in my book.
Right. So you might have a president by the name of Donald Trump instead of Donald Trump.
Well, the name of the president, I'll tell you another little secret.
All right.
The evil president in my book is Ronald John.
Okay.
Is that based on Trump? It isn't obviously based on Trump.
Right.
His original name, funny that you mentioned Donald Trump. I think his original name was Donald Crump. And I decided that was too close. So
Okay.
I changed the name. Donald Trump's name is Donald John Trump.
Right.
So Ronald John is absolutely a
Ronald John.
Ronald John is the name of the president.
I love it.
But again, my like I tell my conservative friends, I finished the book in 2016. He had an opportunity to be a different kind of president than he campaigned to be.
Right.
And he chose to be who he was.
Mm-hmm.
If you find similarities between the president that I wrote about and the president he became, is that on him or is that on me?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Mark. This has been a great conversation, and I want to give a little heads up to our audience. Mark is going to be joining the Not Fake News writers roster. He's going to be contributing an occasional blog from time to time to Not Fake News, and we very, very much appreciate that. And we hope you guys check out notfakenews.biz. So with that, Mark, I think we'll sign off. I thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. So with that, we'll take a quick break here, but I'll be right back with some closing comments. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Mark Bello. I thought he had a lot to say, and I find his ability to use events in the news as the cornerstone for his novels to be really fascinating. Again, watch for Mark's blogs at notfakenews.biz. Meanwhile, thanks for listening. It'd be great if you guys would follow NFN Radio News so you don't miss an episode. Check out notfakenews.biz too, where you'll find new material just about every day by some excellent writers with perspectives on a whole range of topics. You can sign up as a member at notfakenews.biz. And of course, it's all free. Also, let your friends know about this podcast and about notfakenews.biz. Our goal is to be informative and entertaining as we comment on the latest developments in the news with just a little lean to the left. This is Bob Gaddy signing off for NFN Radio News and notfakenews.biz.